back to episode 2 of, I guess, Spooktober Cinema is what we'll call it.
Cinema, all right.
Do an official name in the first one, right?
Yeah.
So this time around, we're back to talk to you about Vampyr or Vampyr, whichever way you want to pronounce it.
It was a film made in 1931 by a Danish filmmaker named Carl Dreyer, who was more famous for The Passion of Joan of Arc, which was a silent film masterpiece. If anybody who's ever read anything about classic film, that's always one that comes up. So he's really known for that and for this.
Yeah.
And other than that, that was about it for his famous part of his career. He did a lot of foreign films, but some interesting things about the production of this film. It was a joint production between French and German filmmakers.
Yes.
So they were actually planning on making the film to be dubbed into different languages. It would be released in France, it would be released in Germany, and it would be released here in the States as well.
Would have been.
There are no existing copies of the English audio version of this, and a lot of what we have as far as what's survived through the years is a film that's basically been hobbled together between the German version and the French version. The Criterion Collection, which is the one we watched for this,
which is, I guess, the German
is the German version. Yeah. I actually own a DVD copy, which is primarily the French version, which isn't as good a shape. But this is a film that, like, when people were going, like, they think of vampire films in the early horror cinema. You think Nosferatu.
Yeah.
You think Dracula with Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
This one is just kind of in the middle of them, and, like, nobody really talks about it.
No, they don't. And I think it's because, as I said while we were watching it, I don't know what the hell's going on. I think that one of the things that the movie suffers from is that its storytelling arc is not the best.
No.
It leaves a lot for interpretation. There's a lot of things that go on that you're like, what's that? Am I supposed to take something out of this? Is this up to my interpretation as to what's going on? Are they trying to artistically tell me something here? Or when they filmed it, did the guy go, hey, that might be spooky, put that in there?
You do get that. It's kind of all over the place. Well, one of the main things that everybody says about this film is there's, like, almost no dialogue. And that was actually by design, because they knew they had to do this in different languages. So, like, well, less is more then. Which kind of makes the film a little more, what's the word I'm looking, nightmarish, more like dreamlike, is the fact that it's mostly...
It does have
it's mostly filmed with just the music score in the background and basically ambient noise.
Yeah, it does have a very surreal feeling to it because, and not only because of the way it's shot, it's just also because you have no idea what the hell's really going on. And it kind of does have that feeling like when you have a dream, you're focusing on something, and then, like, a minute later, you're doing something else. And, like, it has that to it a little bit because it jumps around, and I don't know, like, it opens pretty strong to me, like...
Oh, it's like the first, I'd say the first 20 minutes of this film, it pretty much just gets right to business.
Yeah.
And then
he checks into this hotel place, and then this creepy old guy walks in. He's just like, hey, don't open this package till I'm dead. It's like, what? He's like, don't let the girl die either. Have a good day. And he just, like, leaves. And it's like, okay, well.
Doesn't explain a damn thing.
No. But it just goes from there, honestly.
Yeah, the main character is Alan Gray, who is, I guess, is he a student? Like, he's learning about the occult.
He was a student abroad.
Yeah. And, like, he just checks into this inn, and then all these, like, weird people, like, are, like, showing up and stuff. And then he goes for, like, a walk where he basically just, like, walks into this building. And, well, the first thing is he's walking, and he goes through this archway into this, like, area where this building is. And he sees somebody digging. And this is the first camera trick in the film. The dig I don't know if you're supposed to figure that he's digging a grave or if he's just digging a hole. but they used reverse projection so that it looks like the dirt's going back on the shovel as it's going into the ground, and all you're seeing is the shadow of the person digging. I was like, okay.
Again, you see something like I'm not like a film major or anything, but I've read some stuff like in film when they show you things like that, it's either supposed to either A, lead into something later, or it's something that is like significant to the scene that's going on at the time. So I see that, and in my mind I'm like, what are they trying to tell me?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they were really trying to tell me anything. I think back then they're just like, do you see what we could do if we put this in reverse? Look at that. Isn't that cool? And they're like, fucking put it in, bro. Put it in the film.
Nobody else was doing that kind of stuff at the time.
At that time, that kind of camera trickery was pretty crazy. Like,
I mean, Murnau did a little bit of camera trickery, like in Nosferatu and stuff. He used some different angles and stuff to get scenes across, and there were a few other ones too. But that he sees that, and then he goes into this building, and then this is probably my favorite scene, is the sentry, I guess you could call him, this guard, is that you just see a shadow comes out of this window and is walking, and he goes up a ladder, and his shadow eventually goes back to his body.
Yeah.
Like sits down beside his body on this bench and assumes the pose.
Yep.
And
again, like, I don't know what the hell that's supposed to be.
It's interesting. It's creepy, and I'm always going to remember the shot of the shadow rejoining the body. But the question is, why is this peg leg guard separated from his body? Well, we're going to get more into body soul separation a little later.
Yeah, we will.
But
what I love, and we skimmed over this one, it was in the very beginning of the movie when he just he checks in the hotel, he looks out his window, and there's a guy in the boat just sitting out there at the dock, and he's got a scythe just sitting chilling in the boat.
He sees him as he's walking up to the inn.
Yeah.
And, I guess maybe you're supposed to take out of that is the harbinger of death.
So you think it's like the personification of death?
Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's up to interpretation with this film. There's so many different views as to what they were trying to get across with this film.
Yeah.
And I there are times where it's too artistic for its own damn good.
Well, I blame the French side.
That could very well be. That could very well be. So
we're at the part, he gets past that, the disconnected shadow thing. Then he just, this is the thing I love about this character. He gets in and out of many random buildings, welcomed or not. So he just goes in this random building, starts snooping around their shit. It's like this creepy room with like a piano. There's skulls and skeleton pieces like all over the place. He goes through that, and he's going up a staircase, and then this old man comes out with, and he's like the doctor, I guess. He comes out of this room, walks right past him, pays the guy no mind. This stranger essentially in his home.
Mm-hmm.
Gets down to the door, and then he turns and looks at him. And then he asks him, he's like, "Did you hear that?"
Yeah.
And the young man's like, "Yeah, the children." He's like, "There's no child here." He's like, well, and the dogs. He's like, "There's no child nor dogs here." And then he just leaves.
Yeah.
So
he basically tells him good night and kicks him out.
Good night, kicks him out of the house, which I'm sure anybody would normally do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get any of that. I mean, I understand he's there. From what I gather, he's there taking care of this old woman that is essentially the lead vampire in this story.
Mm-hmm.
That I picked up on.
Mm-hmm.
Why he's doing it, I'm not exactly sure what his motives are. I don't know if he's got a thing for the old broad or not. I'm not exactly sure. He respects her because you see, he lets her out of the room and he takes his, he tips his hat to her, guides her in, sits her down, makes her all comfortable, so there's something there.
Well, and they even kind of allude to this a little later, that he may have sold his soul at some point.
Okay, so he's in servitude.
He's in servitude to her as his master because he as a doctor, I guess maybe he turned his back on Christianity. I don't know. But, so yeah, there's that. And there's other scenes where there's use of shadows where you're only seeing shadows. There's the dancers, which is really weird. And then when he leaves the house, Alan leaves the house, you see the shadows of what looks like children on the grass. Right. And he follows the shadows like they're leading him somewhere.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm like, wow, we have seen a ton of shadows. And from what I gather from this, my opinion, because everybody's got a different one, is the fact that all these shadows represent the souls of the people that she has taken.
Okay.
And some of them don't really realize they're dead, and some of them do and are trying to reach out and send messages. But that doesn't explain the shadow of the guard leaving his own body, but...
Maybe he also sold his soul.
Yeah.
Because they also say, in some sense, if you don't have a soul, you don't have a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I
don't know.
So he follows...
Again, interpretation.
Alan follows the shadow children to this mansion.
Yeah.
Where... The old man who came into his room randomly at the beginning of the film at the end.
The gift not to open till he was dead.
This is his house where he lives with his 2 daughters and his servants.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of like out in the middle of nowhere. Like this place you wouldn't have found if he hadn't followed the shadow children, to this place. So he gets there. And this is when the film just starts really slowing down for me.
Yeah, it did get really slow. So he gets there, and then there's shadow people in the house that are there to kill the old man. Mm-hmm. Why? I don't know. They didn't really explain that. The only thing I could think of is because when you find out later after he dies, the present he gave Alan was a book on vampirism and essentially how to eradicate it. So I don't know if they thought, hey, this old guy has this book, we should kill him.
He's a threat. He's a
threat.
He may have been investigating them.
See, like, I had this thought in my head that he might have been, since the Germans were in on this, making this book, that he might have been a Helsing descendant. I don't know if they're throwing that kind of lore in there, or somebody who studied the occult that was trying to stop this from happening in this village or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure. The shadow figure that had the gun that shot him, I don't know. I guess that was that sentry that we saw earlier. And so that happens. And the thing that's really funny about this scene is he's just creeping outside this house, looking through all the windows.
Alan, he's just like outside the house, just like peering in through these windows and like seeing this happen.
He sees it happen. He's banging on all the windows. It's like, let me in, let me in. Goes to the front door. He's banging on the front door. A servant slowly walks to the door, and he's like, for the love of God, move quicker, let me in. And it's just like, who are you? And he's like, follow me. And runs into the house. Completely natural. And a servant would just let somebody run into their master's mansion.
Yeah.
They get in, they find the body, he feeds him some tea to heal his gunshot wounds, and, the master dies.
Yeah, he dies.
So, naturally, when a strange man enters your home and watches one of your loved ones die, you offer him to stay the night.
This is where I get really confused, because they don't know who this guy is. Yeah. He's outside banging on windows, and all of a sudden the master of the house has been shot dead.
Yeah.
Why would you not think that maybe this guy had something to do with it?
And the woman that offers him a room to stay didn't see him come in.
No.
And warn them of the master being killed. Yeah. They just come in the room, and he's just there, force-feeding him liquid, basically drowning the poor man.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, you stay the night. A room just opened up.
So this is the point where Alan is like, well, the old man's dead now. I guess I can open this present he gave me, which is the book on the history of vampirism, and vampires.
Also puts the question in my head is, how in the hell did the old guy know that this younger gentleman was in this room at the hotel just randomly? Like, I don't get that either.
And would randomly show up at the house with the present with him at the time of the guy's death.
Yeah, he just kept it. Like,
the only thing I could say is maybe the shadows were playing this and making sure this all lined up right because they were trying to avenge their own deaths. Once again, it's a lot of interpretation. A lot.
And if you watch this film, you're gonna be doing this too. You're gonna be like, why did this happen? Yeah. What are you trying to tell me? You know? So, okay, he opens the book, he's reading about, blah, 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 the vampires do this, and there's marks of that and that. All in the meanwhile, there's one of the daughters that's falling very ill.
Mm-hmm.
And, they don't really mention that she got bit, but there's just like a moment where they're like, oh, the wounds on her neck are healing nicely. So you're like, okay, that's, she got bit by a vampire, which when you go back and think that it was the old broad, it makes it way less sexy. Yeah. So, so she's dying. Alan's just kind of there right now, reading the book. Like Will said, this part really starts slowing the movie down. They do a lot of shots of, like, the sky for random reasons, and it's just like, mixed with those shots, nothing really much going on, very little dialogue, and just ambient noise. You are in for a nap. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, when I watched this a few days ago, I actually fell asleep during this part of the film, so we had to rewatch it today. But then you realize that the daughter is being treated by the doctor who we met earlier, and you find out that, like, he's actually poisoning her.
Yeah.
Encouraging her, like it says in the book, that a lot of times vampires want their victims to kill themselves because then they are in the servitude. Apparently, they can't get into heaven at that point. At this point in the film is when a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the story progression is not through dialogue; it's through reading in the book.
Yeah,
and
if you fall asleep at this point, you're not going to get any.
No.
So the doctor's treating her, giving her poison. He comes to visit, and Alan sees him, and he's like, I know this asshole. He kicked me out of his house when I broke in.
He doesn't have dogs or children.
He doesn't have dogs or children. I heard them there. I got a bone to pick with this guy. He's like, I'm going to give him the what for. He follows him up there, and he's like, oh, can we save her? He's like, yeah, give me some of your blood. He's like, well, I don't trust you, but okay, let's do this.
Sure, I'll give some blood.
So the doctor just pulls out these rudimentary tools like a garden hose and a fucking, like basting syringe.
Yeah, it's like 1800s blood transfusion stuff here. I mean, we got like a jar maybe and like long, like really thick needles and like sewing needles pretty much. Like knitting needles,
like crocheting needles and shit. So he takes his blood. Because that's how this works. You just put blood in people.
Yeah.
Alan's in the other room with, like, essentially, like, 500 feet worth of bandage wrapped around his elbow. And he's like, I don't feel good, I'm bleeding. Or he's like,
I'm losing blood.
I'm losing blood. And the doctor just goes, oh, I have it. It's like, no, doc. I'm trying to tell you, you didn't seal my wound properly. When you jammed that 1-inch diameter needle into my arm, it didn't heal.
So as all that is going on, the blood transfusion and all that, the one servant is reading Alan's book that he left laying on the table, and he's reading about how, in another village there was a doctor who became the servant of a vampire, and that there was thought that the vampires that existed in the area included this Marguerite Chopin, who ends up being the old woman.
Yeah.
So
there's your
that's
doctor
where,
and the old woman.
Yeah, that's where I feel like the old man was like studying this or following them somehow. Like maybe they were going from place to place. I don't know. But like
again, in the storytelling sense, I feel like that part of it should have came way earlier.
Yeah, it's really, really odd. And then this is where they kind of break away from the traditional thought on How to Kill a Vampire, they went with the iron stake rather than a wooden stick.
It's more metal. I mean,
to nail their soul. It's not about a stake through the heart. It's about nailing them down to the earth. And that's how you damn their souls.
And when they mean a stake, they literally mean almost like a flagpole that you're going to jam through.
It's like a javelin. It's like a fence post or something.
So I remember when we got to that part where he's going to like put the stake in, I'm like, you think that's enough?
Yeah, so the servant, at this point, Alan, where is he? Oh, he ends up wandering off. I don't remember why. And then he falls, and then he sits on a bench, and then he goes into like an outer body experience, which sets up a pretty interesting scene and a pretty like interesting camera use. They do a POV shot of like if Alan was like in a casket looking out, and like,
which I don't really get the symbolism behind that either. Like,
I don't know. I just know that that's probably one of the scenes that the film's most known for.
And it has the littlest to do with the actual plot of the movie.
It feels like it's just kind of there, because you're like, is he dreaming? Did he, like, from the loss of blood and the lack of sleep, did he just pass out? And he's, like, imagining this all happening. Because then he comes to and realizes, oh, the servant's over there. What's he doing in the graveyard? You know, like the hero really doesn't do a ton in this film.
No,
it's
he like doesn't.
The servant's doing more hero work than he is.
He's just there the entire time.
He's just there, just wandering through this entire thing. So they go over and he's unearthed the grave of Marguerite Chopin, and puts a flagpole through her. And then
don't worry, it's at half.
And then a pretty cool effect for the time for her to be like, her body like decays and she becomes a skeleton basically. Yeah. And as that happens, the daughter of the old man, sits up and goes, I'm free. I feel strong again.
I feel strong.
Yeah. Because the curse was broken.
Yeah.
But that still leaves, the vampire's accomplices, the doctor and the sentry.
Yep. We're not done.
So we shift away from Alan and everything for a second, and we go back to the doctor's house or whatever it is, and you see the sentry's sitting there like playing a banjo for some reason, and the doctor's like smoking a pipe, and then all of a sudden like a storm kicks up, and they like stand up and they like turn towards the window real quick, and it's the face of the old man in the window, like staring at them.
It's a really goofy effect too. Because they had to use the goofiest picture of this old man's face.
He just looked kind of confused and angry.
It looks like an old guy that was at a diner and they gave him the wrong soup. Like, he's just like, I would have been minestrone. This is obviously potato leek.
So, basically, this is supposed to represent the old man's ghost getting revenge on the doctor and the guard.
Which, with all the special effects they went through, they went through a whole, like, astral projection thing where they had, like, him acting, and it was like, they made it a little more clear so you could see through his body. Why couldn't they do that with the old man?
No. They basically just put his face in the window.
It's like, fuck, we used all of our budget.
And we say his face in the window. It's not like his face was like a normal size. No. His face was the entire window. As if now he's giant.
Yeah. It'd be like if I took a picture of myself and just put it over this entire window in the background.
So immediately they panic.
Yeah.
The doctor goes like running into like his office, I guess, or something. And then the sentry, the one-legged man, he goes another way. And then he falls down the stairs to his death.
Yeah.
Which I get. He's a one-legged man going downstairs quick.
But I just feel like the old man's just like, well. He just pushes, he just gets behind him. He's like, bye.
So.
But the doctor gets locked in his office with him.
Yeah.
Apparently. I mean, it's just, there's a struggle.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say that there's a struggle you can make out is because, like, there's a light in the room.
Yeah.
And there's just a bunch of shadows moving around.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah. So the doctor gets free. He runs out. He runs into this this flour mill.
Which I have no idea fucking why.
Like, why would you go there, you know?
Like, what was inside? Because he goes into the contraption where the flour, drops down into a basin. Mm-hmm. He goes in there. I don't know why. There was nothing earlier in the movie. It was like he was hiding gold in there or anything. He goes in there.
Yeah. So he goes in there, and the door locks behind him, and he looks up and asks for help, and you can see the servant from earlier, the one that nailed the old woman.
Yeah.
Nailed the old woman. He's walking around, and I guess maybe you could say he started up the flour works. I mean, did he do it, or was it the ghost? I don't know. But anyway, the doctor dies suffocated in flour, which is one of the weirdest ways I've ever seen a villain die in a film.
Mm-hmm. And if you see the movie, you're going to be like, I could count on my hand the amount of ways you could have saved yourself from dying here, Doc.
Yeah. It's almost like, he gave up pretty quickly. And as he's being drowned in flour, they're switching back to, like, Alan, who rescued the one sister. And we forgot to mention earlier that the one sister was captured by the doctor.
That way, I guess Alan has kind of a thing for...
Yeah, you can kind of tell there's something going on between the two of them. They're walking through the woods back to the house, and the sun is out, and everything's happy music on that end. And then you switch back over as the doctor is getting covered in more and more flour.
Yeah.
And it's like an interesting contrast there, but at the same time, you're right. It's, he could have just climbed as the flower's coming down.
Well, yeah, because it was just a mesh screen that the flower
shifting up, Yeah. Or, push the flower out through the holes in the door. Don't just, stay there and just kind of hold on and just go, oh, I'm dead now, But,
zit.
And that's how the film ends, so.
Yeah. I know it sounds like we bitched a lot about it, but I do end up watching this every year as well. It's, the movie itself is perfect with atmosphere, and it just, the silent nature of it makes it that much creepier too.
Mm-hmm.
And you watch it and you just get this feeling this whole time where you're like, I don't know if what I'm watching is actually all real, or if this is because I had this theory before that it was all a dream made up by Alan himself. He actually didn't go through any of this.
Yeah.
Because he goes to sleep in the beginning of the movie, only to be woken up by the, old man that just gave him a present that he never opens till later on. So you never know, it could have all just been a dream.
Yeah.
So, I kind of like it that it's left up to so much interpretation, because you can take out of it what you will, and what, I guess you yourself would accept as what is, the actual story.
No.
But,
it's one of those films that I can't recommend for everybody.
No, it's not something everybody's going to watch. For a movie of its time, it was pretty ahead of itself, in all honesty. So I give this a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's a pretty solid movie. If you are looking into watching old horror movies that are silent, I would definitely add this to your list of things to watch.
I think it's safe to give it a 7.5. I'm close to giving it an 8, but I'm giving it a 7.5 because the plot is kind of hard to follow at times. And the fact that the story, there's clearly two separate halves of this film. There's the beginning, and then once he gets to the mansion, and the rest of the story is pretty much told through the reading of the book, rather than actually seeing things happen. You're just kind of told this is what's happening.
Yeah.
That it kind of hurts it a little bit. But like I said, for the camera tricks for the time period and the different things that they tried to do in this, it gets bonus points. But 7.5 is a pretty solid score on it. And like you said, for anybody who's interested in not only horror film but early cinema camera tricks and stuff, it's pretty cool to go back and see.
Yeah. So next week, what do you want to do? You want to do Old Dark House?
We will do, yeah, sure.
Okay, we'll do Old Dark House, and let's do, since you're sticking with older horror movies, I guess I'll stick with some of the more 80s stuff. Why don't we do Pumpkinhead?
Pumpkinhead. All right. All right.
Yeah? You got a way to watch Pumpkinhead?
I'll find a way.
All right. We'll watch. So next week, we're going to do The Old Dark House and Pumpkinhead. So until then, guys, thank you so much for watching. Catch us for more Spooktober cinema.